Well, the weather forecast for the next week is looking pretty good, not showing a lot of rain and showing perfect temperatures around the 75 Fahrenheit, around 23, 24 degrees Celsius. So I think it's the perfect time to go get a classic British Roadster out of storage. Alright guys, the 1960 Triumph TR3A has made it back home to the garage. For the next few weeks at least, we plan to get out on a few drives with it. There is one issue that I need to contend with. When I put it away last year, the rear brake lights were not working, so I don't know if that's the switch or maybe just an electrical connection, so we're just in the process of trying to debug that. So the switch on the TR3 is on the frame rail down here behind the passenger wheel. So we're just going to get down there and hopefully it'll be a quick fix and maybe just be the electrical connections. If not, I've got a new switch for it and we can get that installed fairly quickly. I might have to bleed the brakes though, which will add to some of the length of time to get this back on the road. I did drive it back from storage without the brake lights, using hand signals. Haven't used those for a while. Anyway, it's looking good, running great, considering it hasn't been driven a lot in the last couple of years. Anyway, we'll put a few miles on it in the next few weeks. Alright, Friday morning, just about 8 a.m. Time for a little ride. I think it's a beautiful day. It's a little wet out, rained overnight. Well, that'll soon dry up. Let's go for a run. Alright, Friday afternoon, about 3 p.m. I just got a notification that my tires are in for the 250 to go on the Koenig Rewind rims. So we're off to the tire shop. Been busy clearing a trailer out for a secret mission. Well, some of you know it's not going to be that secret. Alright guys, we are back from the tire store. Tires are looking great. So I went with a Yokohama Avid Ascend LX tire. I think on the TR6 I have the Yokohama Avid Ascend GT. Don't quote me on that, I have to go back and look. On the TR6 I'm running 205 60/16 and I thought I'd go a little bit narrower on the TR250, so I've got 195 60/16s to go on the car. So I threatened to go down to 55 profile on the sidewall, but based on some calculations I did, I stuck with the 60s, and like I said, I just went with a little bit narrower profile tire. On the car right now are 195 65 15-inch tires. So they're slightly bigger, I believe, diameter wise than what's on the car. I think it was 0.2, like maybe about a 1/4 inch bigger, so it should look good. I think I may need to run with a spacer in the front, but we won't know until we actually put the tires on the car. Just for informational purposes, on the TR6 I have pretty much the same setup with the exception of I've got lever shocks in the TR250, or sorry, lever shocks in the TR6, and we've got the aftermarket tube shock conversion here on the TR250. But other than that, from a spring, sway bar, shock perspective, they're pretty similar. On the TR6 I ended up putting spacers in both the front and the rear, but again 205 series, so a little bit wider tires than the 195s that are going on this car, so that might make a bit of a difference. We'll have to wait and see. Alright, the first thing I'm probably going to have to do here after I take some measurements is we're probably going to have to shorten the wheel studs that are on these Richard Good hubs. So you can actually order the Richard Good hubs with some longer studs. So I guess if you'd intended on running some spacers on your wheels, Richard has the option of running longer studs. So if I was to have got the Roto wheels, for example, I think I probably would have had to run spacers, but since we've gone with the Koenigs, we're not going to have to run spacers. These are just direct bolt-on. So in that case, I think I'm going to have to shorten these studs slightly, so I'm not really looking forward to having to do that, but I think that's what we're going to have to do. Based on the lug nut check that I've just done on the, or I actually did on the rims previously when I just didn't have the rubber on the rims, it looks like I'm going to have to shorten these studs just a little bit to make those splined lug nuts work. So we'll probably work on doing that first. We're going to be careful with the cutoff wheel. I think that's the route we're going to take. Obviously we're going to have to be careful with the sparks. We don't want to screw up any of our paint. So we'll see how we're going to do that. Alright, trailer is gone. Nice to have the driveway empty for a little while Lynn's borrowed the trailer. Wheels are on. Looking good. We'll talk a bit more about that after. How would you like to see it out in the sun? I know I would. Be the first time. let's wheel it out together. Alright, here we go. 1 horsepower. Alright, it's great to get it out in the sun to have a little bit better look at it. And of course, having a little bit better look at it means you'll find a few areas that you're still not quite happy with. But that's okay. Some of the things I can fix, some of the things I'll just have to live with. I'm not going to point them out on this video. They might be only apparent to me, so I'm not going to bother you with the details. But we'll do a quick walk around the car out here in the sun. Obviously, there's a lot more still to do. I'll give you a bumper update. They are supposed to arrive here on Tuesday at my house, so we'll look forward to getting them on early in the week next week. So that'll make a big difference to the front and rear end appearance. Trim strips, the top trim is still not being fastened down, so in some places it's sitting up a little bit, so I haven't folded the tabs down yet. I'm still playing around a little bit with fender fitment and gaps, so they're looking pretty good. So we're on the final stages of that. I do like the tire selection as far as size is concerned. The 195 seem to be just about the ticket as far as the stick out is concerned. So I'm happy with that choice in the end. And the 60 profile seems to work out pretty well. It is sitting a little high to my liking in the rear end versus the front. The front's just about perfect. There is going to be a bit more weight going in the rear end. I still have the spare to put in. The gas tank is completely bone dry, so that will definitely add some weight to the rear end. Plus, I still have to do some major adjustments to things like the camber. So I have the adjustable camber brackets from Good Parts in the rear here, so I think that will end up dropping the rear end down a little bit once we get the camber adjusted. So those are a few things that I'm looking forward to getting done once this gets closer to being on the road. Just continue to do a bit of a walk around here. Again, that rear end will be a bit more transformed once those bumpers show up. Still have the wires hanging down. Again, we're going to do a big blowout day, I think, as far as the wiring is concerned. I want to make sure that I have everything in place as far as the lighting is concerned. So that includes the lighting on the bumpers that illuminates the license plate light. So once the bumpers go on, then we'll be a little bit closer to getting everything wired up. It's a little dirty on the bottom of the valence there from my wet sanding efforts. I still haven't wet sanded the bottom below the trunk or boot lid, so that still needs to be done, although it's looking pretty good here in this video. So remember, that panel was hand formed over Ellen's knee, so that seems to have turned out pretty well considering what we started with. The exhaust is going to look good. We'll get that shined up a little bit more. I think the stick out is going to be perfect once the bumper goes on. And from the passenger side, again, I'm not 100% satisfied with the sill stick out, but it is much better than it was. So we'll just have to live with that. But again, it's not bad. The rear's not bad. The front, again, is better than it was. It's looking pretty good. And a little bit better shot of the ghost stripe, although it's not in full sun here. I have to back it up in the driveway to get it in full sun, but you can get the idea. You can see how much swirls there are still in my paint. I'm not sure if they're going to show up in the video. I think I'm going to have to get this professionally detailed. So my polishing is not up to snuff. I can get it to a point, but I can't get it over that last 10 to 20%. So I think we're going to be sending this out for a final polish once it's done. So again, as far as the stripe is concerned, the alignment is pretty darn good. I don't know if you can see that, probably not. Let me back this car up a little bit so you can get it. I'll get it a little bit more in the sun and out of the shade of the garage. Hopefully I'll be able to push it back up the driveway. Pushed her back in the driveway, and of course the sun goes behind a cloud. It'll come out in a second. Anyway, of course the front bumper is going to make a huge difference to this car, along with the two driving lights that we showed previously, and again with the grille that are all ready to go on, except I'm just waiting for the bumper. So once that comes, again, we'll put the front end together, and that will make things look a little bit better. From a stick out perspective on those tires, again, I think it's just about the right size profile for this car. I think 205s would have been just a little too wide. You can just see, I think that's just about perfect. So those are 195s again. And you can see that my alignment needs to be adjusted. This one's pointing out. I could do a string alignment at home, but I'm going to take it to a professional shop anyway. This is a brand new frame for this car, so it'll need all new shims front and rear. All right, maybe a little bit better look at that ghost stripe now, since the sun's come out. I'm liking that. It's a little understated. I don't think it takes away from the car. So we're happy with the way that turned out. Surrey top, I've got a bit of news to, the Surrey hard top. I've got some news on that. I'll maybe share with you at the end of this video. I have made a decision on what I'm going to do as far as color is concerned. So there's your walk around. Pretty good, I think. Definitely a huge change of color with it being out in the sun. Alright, that's it for now. Let's have a chat about the hardtop. Alright, we've had a good and healthy discussion on what we wanted to do as far as the painting of the hardtop section is concerned. Originally I had thought about possibly doing it as sort of a checkerboard or racing flag sort of pattern, utilizing the royal blue and then the satin pearl, the ghost pearl, as the alternating colors in the top. And I've sort of gotten away from that. I still kind of like the idea. I have seen one other TR250 done in that sort of style, actually two, and they look really good in my mind. One of the other options I considered was actually doing this royal blue and then doing a ghost pearl Union Jack here in the center, a small Union Jack flag here in the center. Some guys wanted me to do entire Union Jack tops, and I've seen that done, so I didn't really consider doing that, but that was another option to consider. Some people wanted me to leave it white, and that wasn't really an option in my mind, although it's kind of growing on me now that I see it out here in the sun. All right, here's what I've decided to do with the hardtop, and I'm not sure if I mentioned it or not, but this kind of came late in the thinking process of what I wanted to do. So as you know, yesterday was tire day. Now before I actually had the tires mounted, I actually had taken one of the rims down to my auto body paint supply store, and I asked them if they could do a paint match on the graphite centers of the rims. So here I'm holding a can of the paint match to the graphite here, and what I'm going to do is I am going to attempt to paint the hardtop section of the Surrey in the graphite to match the wheels. I think that's going to look pretty good. It's going to cost me $145 to find out. This is what 1 quart of paint costs up here, so of course that's not including the clear coat either. So 145 bucks to get the paint match done. So we'll spray that out eventually. There's a lot of stuff I need to do in the meantime before we get to that point, but we want to make sure we have a window to paint in as it's rapidly getting colder here. So we'll probably get painting that hardtop section within the next couple of weeks, and then we'll pop it back on the car and we'll see what it looks like. I think it's going to look pretty good. We're not going to do any pearl effects on it. We're not going to be doing a Union Jack. We're just going to be going with a straight graphite for starters anyway. And again, if I don't like it, it can be sanded down and repainted any way I wish. So graphite it is. Well, look for your comments in the comment section. And just returning to a bit of a discussion we had yesterday regarding shortening the rear studs. So here are some of the cutoffs from the driver's side of the studs. And I didn't cut a lot off, as you can see. I did measure the front studs, which are stock. They measured about 1 inch to the back plate. So the rear studs are slightly longer than 1 inch with this much cut off. So we're good to go there. What I decided to do is I decided to break down and use my reciprocating saw with a metal blade on there to slice these off versus getting the angle grinder out with the cutting wheel. As I'd mentioned yesterday, I was a little bit concerned with the sparks flying everywhere, so turned out that was the right decision. With the reciprocating saw I was able to get that in there easily enough, and I'd had a supply of blades to be able to do that, so all is good in the hood. Hey, look who came for a visit in old Java. Looking good? Sounding good?
Yep. That's anymore?
No, perfect. Not a wisp of smoke. So it looks like your engine rebuild's good.
Yep.
Along with your suspension, your exhaust, your steering, everything. So
Everything. It's a new car.
as I said, it's going to drive like a brand new car. Very nice. All right, guys, back in the garage. It certainly was great to see it out in the sun for a little while, but back in the garage so we can resume work on it. The first thing I did when I pushed it back in is I decided that I was going to do a next steps list. I haven't done one for a little while on this car, so I've compiled a new list and managed to get it all on one page. I think this is the bulk of the items. There may be a few items that I'm missing here, but let's have a look at the list and we'll go line by line. Before we take a look at the list, let me just say that these are in no particular order. I've just kind of jotted them down. Some of the jobs will be done based on availability of parts. Some will be done based on availability of weather, for example. So again, in no particular order, we'll just start right at the top. So interior, door panels, carpets, trans tunnel, and cubby. So I did install previously the rear panels of the car, but I've had since removed them in order to fit the Surrey backlight. Now, I was just having a little chat with Lynn saying that it's potential that I may need to remove the backlight again in order to fit the side interior panels, because the tabs from the Surrey backlight come down where the panel needs to fit. So anyway, we might be able to do a little juggling to get those to fit in there, but obviously we got to get the back panel fit in there as well. There is actually a slot or a channel in the bottom of the Surrey backlight for those panels to fit, so hopefully those will fit okay. Of course, we still need to install our door panels, our Moss Deluxe panel kit. So we'll do a continuation of that installation project and finish off those doors. And of course, I still need to do carpeting ahead of the seats. We have the carpeting under the seats and the rear shelf done, but we still need to do the carpeting ahead of the seats plus the bulkhead trimming as well. So we'll get to that eventually. So also as part of the interior finish, I do have to install a new transmission tunnel. I was thinking about keeping the original tunnel, which is obviously a fiberboard or a cardboard style tunnel. This one's had some work done on it. I think it's been reinforced with some fiberglass. I've decided to go to a new two-piece tunnel. So that is from Moss Motors. We have the seal kit and the fastening kit for that. So we'll get to that eventually. What we'll probably do is just install the front part of the two-piece cover and leave the rear part out until we finish our test driving to make sure that our overdrive is operating as it should. It's nice to be able to have the rear cover not on, so in case you have troubles with something like your solenoid or your operating valve, you can actually have access to fix that. The other part of the last part of the interior finish will be the cubby door. It's currently obviously on the car, but there was no hinge attachment. So the hinges at the bottom are attached, but there is no, I don't know what it's called. There's a limiting bracket and a little bumper that needs to be installed. So not much, but still needs some work nonetheless. So we'll get to doing that as well as part of the interior refinish. All right, the next item on the list is sort of part of the interior as well. I could have probably grouped it in with the interior, but steering wheel. So I actually have a new steering wheel on order, a new leather-wrapped steering wheel, and it's coming probably this week. We will see if it arrives at my mailbox or not. So that's a relatively quick fix. I'm not sure what this wheel is off of, but it came on the car to me initially. So I think this might be from a TR4 or possibly a GT6. Some said it might be a less than wheel. I'm not sure. Anyway, I'm not a big fan of it, and it's too large for me, so it's coming off, and we'll be fitting a 13-inch leather-wrapped wheel in its place. So stay tuned for that. All right, next item on the list is bumpers, and I think I maybe mentioned it earlier in this video that the bumpers are supposed to be coming by next Tuesday directly to me here. On their way from Vietnam. They are the polished stainless steel bumpers, so it'll be interesting to see once they arrive what kind of quality they are. They definitely were a good price point. As part of the bumper installation, we will be installing the driving lights at the front, since the bracketry is part of the bumper bracketry, so we'll be doing that at the same time. I've listed brackets here, and by that I mean rear brackets. I'm missing actually one of the rear brackets for the rear bumper installation. So this is how the bumper came off the car. I believe I'm missing another bracket on the one side here, so I'm going to try to fabricate that. So stay tuned and see how my fabrication efforts go for the rear bumper installation. All right, sorry for the lawnmower noise in the back room. My neighbor is cutting her lawn, so we'll continue on anyway. Next item was scuttle vent flap. So we still have to add the vent flap on here. It is painted and it is standing by. It hasn't been cut and buffed yet. To be honest with you, I'm not real happy with the paint on it, but we'll actually wait and see what it looks like after it's cut and buffed. That should be a fairly quick process. So that is standing by. The hardware to operate it is installed. There is a seal here that I'm sure is going to be too large, because mostly all of the seals from what I've read are a little bit too large and need to be trimmed down. So I've got all the components ready to go to install the vent flap. It's just whether or not I'm happy with the paint or not. As part of that, I've listed windshield wipers here. I actually just received a box in the mail with the wiper blades. I'd actually had the wiper arms for some time, but I've just received the blades, so that'll be a fairly quick fix to get the wipers on. It probably won't be as quick a fix to get them operating properly and parking properly. That's got to be set up, so there'll probably be a little bit of a video on getting the wipers on and getting the parking set up for the wipers themselves. So the next item I have on my list is wing beading, and what I mean by that is that I've not actually bent any of the tabs on the bottom of the beading up. So what you do once everything is in place, you get under the car and then you can actually bend those tabs up to fix it in place to keep the beading from pulling up. That is yet to be done on any of the beading on the car. As a matter of fact, I still have not repositioned the beading in the rear valence, which needs to come up a little bit to meet the rear tail lights. So that'll be part of the process as well. We'll reposition the rear beading. Once we've got that position, we'll bend those tabs over to keep that beading from coming up and out. Next item is wing duct fixing. So wing ducts are in and looking good. They're in the proper space now, I believe, as far as the fender fitment is concerned. I hadn't fitted them because I wanted to be a little bit free floating until I got the fenders positioned where they needed to be. Now that the fenders are where they need to be, I need to fasten these to the body tub on the interior. So I don't know if you recall, but I bought an angle drive for my impact driver that we're planning on using some self-tapping screws on the interior of the engine bay in order to fasten those fender ducts permanently. Next item on the list is grill fitting, and as you know, if you look back through my videos, we've had the grill fitting previously. We've actually added new lights into the grill and new wiring. We've also done some polishing and painting of the grill, so that's ready to go. Just needs to be installed and be permanently bolted in place. All right, next item on the list, seals for the door and window. So currently there are no seals for the window or door installed. I did have them on temporarily. It does look like we have room, based if I look behind the door, it does look like we have room for the seals, which is good, because you're always concerned, again, with fat seals that are on the market with doors closing properly. So we were able to check the window fitment against the top of the windscreen, and the angle is looking pretty good. We may do a little bit more adjustment on the window angle. There's a little bit of adjustability in the bracketry and in the regulator within the door cavity. So I think what we'll do is we may play around with that a little bit, see if we can get that angle to be a bit better before we go ahead and button up the door panels. Some more company visiting the garage. Watch Les get into this. Hey, watch your language.
What's up? It's got sacks or seats, Dave. They must have took the old potato sacks out of Triumphs.
Pretty graceful there, Les.
Oh, you try this.
No.
I'm sure you'll leave your you-know-what sits on top of it.
Oh yeah, you gotta watch those pipes for sure.
Oh yeah.
That's cute.
Yeah. Look at this stupid.
The chain.
It's a golf. It's a golf club cover.
Hi, Tushy, you want to have a play? Want to come out and have a drive? Come on, Tush. You can join the Triumph Club if you want.
Look at the shit. Hey,
Yeah, I saw the chain.
toilet chain.
Yeah. All right.
We used to have chains on our toilets in England, David.
Drive safely. You have seatbelts in that thing.
This thing is
Aircraft.
seatbelt.
There you go.
Off that one, the Canadian one that crashed in the water.
I think I'd rather be thrown out.
You'd have a sore neck.
All right. See ya.
See you, buddy.
Drive safe. All right. Next item on the list: chrome trim lower. So I think I've mentioned this before, but there is actually a trim strip that goes on the bottom, just below the door, and then it's blacked out below that, with usually like a 3M Schutz type material, very similar to what's on the TR6. So I'm debating on whether I want to actually do that chrome trim strip or not. It will actually work perfectly here on the driver's side, but I may have some issues because of that sill fitment on the passenger side. It is much better than it was, but I'm not sure whether that chrome trim strip will work without me playing with it too much. So we may just not do that trim strip altogether, but it's a decision I need to make sooner or later. All right, hardtop painting, and I think we had a bit of a discussion on this one. The car was outside in the sunshine, and I talked about getting paint mixed up. So here's the paint over here once again. So graphite paint to match my wheels, the wheel centers. So we'll have to get that done probably sooner than later, based on the weather. And I mentioned that some of these things will be based on parts availability, some will be based on weather. This will definitely be based on weather, because as we're getting into fall here, of course the painting days will be numbered, so we need to do this sooner than later in order to take advantage of the weather. So this will be graphite initially. Again, if it's something I don't like in the end, it can be painted over. I'm pretty sure it's going to look good, but until we actually get it painted in that color, we'll never know. So that is on the list of things to do. So next item on the list is carburetor linkage, and I need to do a little bit of work here. First thing I wanted to do is to add an extra arm here on the throttle bar, and I wanted to do a return spring. So a throttle bar would come up and have a return spring fixed to a bracket back here, just as a safety. The other thing I need to do is work on my choke cable runs. I'm going to have a little bit of an issue utilizing the second and third chokes based on the way the cable runs and how the throttle pushes open. I may be able to just run this with one choke. We'll have to wait and see. Otherwise, I'm going to have to get crafty and develop some way to manipulate the second and third chokes. Stay tuned for that. The final wiring I have down to the bottom of the list here, as I want to make sure that I have everything on the car that requires wiring. So for example, I want to have the rear bumper on with the license plate lights wiring ready to go, so we can get that hooked up where it needs to be. So I want to do basically do a one-shot final wiring, make sure everything works on the car as it should. That's not to say in the meantime I'm not going to be working on adding some elements. For example, battery cables. I just got a brand new positive and negative battery cable in the mail, so we can start adding elements to that. But as far as the final hookups of everything to the fuse box, that still needs to be done. Things like hooking up to the coil and to the alternator, for example, to the oil pressure switch, that all needs to be done. Fog lights we had wired up previously, but obviously they've been taken off the car, so those need to be rewired up. So there's a few other things that we need to take into account for. We've got a USB that we need to wire up. The O2 sensor needs to be wired up. It is installed, just the wiring needs to be done for that as well. So there's a few things that we added to the car that need to be wired in. If you go back, we actually previously did a full, probably about a half day's worth of work, added a secondary fuse box and added a bunch of relays already to the car. So we just need to finalize the wiring for the rest of the car, which shouldn't take too long, but I'm going to assign probably a full day to do that. Obviously, Alin is my wiring guru, so he'll be invited back to the garage. I'll make sure that the fridge is full of beer for that session. So again, stay tuned for that coming up hopefully in the near future within the next couple of weeks. All right, next item on the list, alignment and safety certification. These are going to kind of go hand in hand. I'm expecting that the safety certification will be done by the same shop that does the alignment. So as many of you know, this is a new frame to this car, and currently there are absolutely no shims in any of the suspension points to align this car, whether it's toe, caster, camber, whatever. I do have the adjustable camber brackets in the back from Good Parts, but they are just basically set midway. So the camber needs to be adjusted in the rear as well as the front, the toe, etc. Like I said, I have all of the shims available for the shop to work with, but I just need to find a shop, hopefully locally, that's able to put this car up on the rack and have the specs or the specs in the system or in the computer for them to be able to work on a car like this. Now, I did find a shop locally many years ago, this is like 14 years ago, that worked on the TR6, so that would be my first option to go to see if they can actually do the alignment on my 250 as well. Should be the same or fairly close to the same specifications as the TR6, if not identical. So hopefully they still have the old alignment rack system there that had in their computer software had a TR6. So hopefully they'll be able to utilize that data to be able to set up the 250. Hopefully that makes sense. So that will be a big day, safety certification day. All right, next item on the list is not really critical, but it's something I want to have done. So buffing and ceramic coating potentially. As I had the car out in the sun, I could see that there are still some areas that are not 100% perfect or as good as they could be, let's say. Again, I'm an amateur when it comes to buffing and polishing. You know that I've bought 2 new pieces of equipment to utilize. And realistically, the car is not too bad, but it can be better. So I think that's where the professionals that do this on a daily basis come in. They can sort of refine what I've done and make it definitely better. So in conjunction with that, there's a possibility that I might want to actually get this ceramic coated. So that's a fairly expensive proposition up here. That could be in the neighborhood of probably $700 to $1,000, buffing, polishing, ceramic coating. So that's something I'm going to have to decide whether I want to have done or not. There is also potential that I may actually go back and try to refine my techniques a little bit better and see if I can get this to look a little bit better than it does prior to me deciding whether I want to send it out to a professional or not. Stay tuned. All right, on to the last line item, and this should technically be driving and bug fixing. As with any extensive restoration project, once you start driving it, you're going to have small things, probably, well, we're hoping only small things crop up. We don't want any major catastrophes to happen, but there's usually some small bugs that need some tweaking or fixing along the way. So that's expected with this project. You know, with my TR6 restoration and my TR3 restoration, I ran into some small issues towards the end that we had to rectify, and I fully expect that some items will have to be addressed on this car as well. So stay tuned for that. Hopefully, like I said, they'll be minor and not major, and they won't be, you know, take us long to correct. All right, guys, that is the end of this video. So once again, just wanted to take the opportunity to thank you very much for watching and commenting on the videos. It means a lot to me. Also, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, consider subscribing. For those of you who have subscribed, I thank you very much for your continued support, and we'll look for you on the next video.